Crank up the volume and rip off the knob!
He's your buddy on demand. Click, boom, here comes the man. Volume up. I'm Brian from Shwa. Welcome to Rent-A-Friend Radio. My friends, I got a whole lot of show for you today. I am diving even deeper into my long conversation with vocab Malone, the man, the myth, the legend, Cab, now over at God City. So if you go to YouTube and look for Cab Malone, God City, that's where he is hosted. That's where he is putting his my brain wants to say merch. It's not merch. It's content. It's where he's putting his content. The show is free. Don't complain. All right. So I'm going to have a section of that where I'm going to ask about how he got hooked up with David Wood, which ultimately led to him being part of the ISLAMICIZE Me project, which is where I kind of got introduced to him in the first place. So in the previous installment, in the last episode, he told us about his past, how he was like into hip hop and Christian apologetics. He was into evangelism. And then you get to hear how he sort of got introduced to Islam by God bringing Muslims into his life in Phoenix, Arizona, where he was going for college. So he moved from Ohio to Phoenix, and that's where he was introduced to Muslims. And that's where, by essentially building relationships with Muslims, he learned about Islam. And by learning into that more, he got connected to David Wood, who himself had become sort of a Christian apologist focusing on Islam, because David Wood had a friend who was a Muslim. And as he explains it, he's like, my best friend was a Muslim. And I'm like, well, I got to learn about Islam then. And so that's how he got to be an apologist who sort of focused on Islam, is because he had a friend who was a Muslim. So we're going to get into that a little bit. I've got music for you today. We've got some KNMW with some hardcore rock and roll. We got some sweet Japanese love by Mikato Nosume. And then the Dr. Cheese Experience will be here. We are getting into this week's book, Proof of God. We got 3 chapters I'm going to go through where we are going to show you how easy it is to know and to understand with certainty that the God of the Bible is real and you can know him. And Jesus loves you. All right. All that being said, let's get into this conversation with vocab Malone. Enjoy. So you're just kind of meeting people on the street and meeting them where they are. And that kind of drives what you sort of specialize in, is that these things you study are because of the people that you've met.
Yeah. And so that's literally what happened with Islam. So I listened to some apologists and read certain apologists who specialize in Islam, even though it wasn't a major part of my regular everyday experience. So I had this certain amount of almost like preemptive background information and knowledge that it was just like the Lord was kind of putting into me, but I didn't really have an outlet. But one day, I remember the conversation. I was on the street and I was talking to one of the aggressive neo-atheists, and it was a female and a couple other, I forget who she had with her, but there was a bunch of atheists around in this sort of crowd. But the one I was talking to was this gal that was really aggressive, and how stupid God was because of what he did with the eye, and how stupid he was because of his dumb designs relating to the back and the vertebrae and the spine. It was the stupidest thing, and all this. And I was kind of just listening to her at this stage in the conversation, and I kind of caught it out of my eye. It was like this. It was this weird moment, and it was almost like symbolic of a turn of dealing with atheists, primarily to Muslims. I see a guy in these white flowing robes with the long beard, and I mean, he looked, and this is not to try to make a joke, he looked like a younger Osama bin Laden. His beard was full black. He didn't have any gray in it, and he wasn't quite, I think, as tall, but he was a taller man. But he dressed literally the same way, and he's walking out, and there's a mosque right down the street from where we would be at in this one location, but the Muslims never came out because this is usually the time when they would be at prayer. And so you just didn't see them a lot in this. It's kind of a secular environment, a lot of bar hopping and stuff. So it's perfect for us, and apparently perfect for bar hoppers. But Muslims aren't going to be really in that environment. But I see him, and he's with a guy, and I'm like, and I just feel like I should start talking to this guy. And so I tell the lady, excuse me, just a minute, just a minute. And I turn around because he's passing behind me as I am listening to her complain about God's designs. And I say, excuse, are you a Muslim? He's like, yes. What do you know about Islam? And so we started having this conversation right away, and I found out that he was out there to do dawah, meaning that's the word that they would use for evangelism. Yeah. It means to invite people to Islam. So he's inviting people to Islam. Apparently, he had made a contact with somebody, and he was out there to give them a CD of the Surah of Maryam, which it was being sung in Arabic and then translated into English. That's a very common surah that a lot of Muslims like to first point, especially people they think are Christian. They like to point into that. So he was out there to do this, and the person apparently didn't show up. But him and I started talking, and all of a sudden I saw more Muslims out there than I'd ever seen. A bunch, and I found out later it's partially because it was Ramadan, so they were like there later, so they did kind of spill over to Mill Avenue afterwards to kind of see what was going on. So I'm having this conversation. It's going. He's like, well, why don't you come back to the mosque with us? So we walk over there, and then I start talking to these other guys. The original guy disappears. Next thing you know, it's like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm talking to these 2 college student Muslim guys who are more moderate in their views and this and that. And it was like this 8-hour experience, almost baptism by fire, accidental kind of thing just happened. Mm-hmm. And I went home, and I was like, whoa. And I realized it was a new world and all that. And then I kind of started transitioning to that, and I started linking up these guys who did masjid evangelism, where you go outside the mosque and you stand after they're coming out, and you stand in a public place and ask them if they like a Gospel of John or something like that, and have these conversations. And it started transitioning into that from that, and that's actually how one of the ways David Wood and I started intertwining, and Sam Shamoon and I started intertwining, is because we had some mutual people because of those things. And that's how it ended up me doing, the skits and the parodies, such as the Boom Boom Room and Islamicize Me, actually came out of that context. So that was where that turn happened.
Well, David Wood is East Coast, isn't he?
Yeah.
Was he living out on the West Coast at the time, or does he just come out and visit?
Well, so I followed his blog at the time because I was a big blogger. So my first foray into public space apologetics, because stuff that's being recorded, because all the stuff on the street, it's sort of lost into the mists of time. We weren't out there recording ourselves or really writing about it very much. You're just doing it week after week, right? Well, publicly, I started doing 2 things. Public radio.
This is Vocab Malone, your favorite urban theologian, street apologist, and semi-retired Christian hip-hop artist. I am on the microphone today as a radio host.
And that's a long, interesting story how that happened, and doing apologetics on the radio, and then blogging, because that was a much more major part of the apologetics landscape on the internet at the time. Mm-hmm. It's not that it's disappeared, but it's not this primary thing that I feel like it was in a lot of ways when I was first really getting involved on the more public level. So I followed his blog and saw he was coming to Phoenix, and then we kind of just ended up linking up and just met each other from there, and just kind of worked off and on with mutual people in various contexts.
Steadily learning, hear a fresh sermon. Jeremiah fired the kind that be burning. Now I got the yearning to put that sweat and work in. Yeah, aha, Mashiach, a Sunni, Mashiach, a tune thee. Yeah.
So we have some older interviews together we've done that I've since uploaded to the channel. They're audio only, but they're interesting because it's like you hear when we're kind of first getting to know each other and stuff like that. And it was later on that he was like, hey, I got these ideas, and since you go after Hebrew Israelites and you deal with Islam, you might be the guy to do that. What do you think of this? And he started telling me about it, and all of a sudden I started adding a bunch of ideas of my own. He's like, what? Including the name for the series, which was Islamicize Me at the time. I was like, Islamicize Me. He's like, oh, and he got it right away. Once he had explained it, he didn't know what he was going to call it. Okay. But he got it right away, and he's like, well, clearly you already, he saw and basically he asked me at the right time in my life and la. And so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, bro. And then we just kind of started going on from there. And that's where a lot of stuff started transitioning more into the YouTube world of apologetics for me at that time. Had to do with sort of David's influence and our work together there. And that was a fascinating, it's been a fascinating journey since then.
Cool. Yeah, you guys have done some very interesting and entertaining stuff. do my viewers a favor and explain to them what Islamicize Me is briefly, and also mention the Boom Boom Room and give us sort of an overview of what those are, and also what they're not, because I think you know the criticisms on both of those, and I'd like you to just cut those off at the pass and tell everybody what it is and what it's not.
Islamicize Me, I see as a 32 episode web series, and these are the facts of it, but a 32 episode web series that is designed basically to expose Muhammad as a false prophet.
We've agreed to follow the teachings of Muhammad for 30 days. What do you mean? But there are a lot of commands in Islam, a lot of Muslim sources. Sahih al-Bukhari.
Sahih al-Bukhari, 2797.
Sahih Muslim, 5300.
Allah says in the Quran,
In the glorious Quran al-Karim.
In Surah 4, verse 34.
Ibn Ishaq. Sahih Bukhari. Sahih Muslim, number 3600.
Sahih Muslim. Look at this, 5537.
Sahih Muslim, number 3597. Sunan Ibn Majah, number 1944. Sahih al-Bukhari, 2797.
Sahih al-Bukhari, number 63.
This is the life of Muhammad. Sirat Rasul Allah.
Here's something. Sunan Nasai.
Surah 9, verse 123 of the Quran.
In the Quran we are told.
Sunan Ibn Majah, number 520.
If you ever doubt Islam, just think about the miracle here.
Islam invented science.
Yeah.
Islam invented science.
I've heard that too. Yeah, that's true.
This could get interesting real fast.
What we have as a setup for this, Brian, is that three guys with a background in atheism are convinced to do everything that Muhammad says in the sources that are accepted down to a T without really much sort of other understanding, or just kind of like looking at the page and then doing it and doing everything. So not just the popular stuff, but everything that's there, right? The stuff that is not really as well known. Sure. So, Muhammad, it's said in one of the hadith, walks by a graveyard and there's two people who had freshly died, and he says, they're getting punished right now, but for minor things. And, he goes on to elaborate, and he says, one of them was a gossip, and the other one couldn't keep urine off of himself. And it's like, that's weird. So he's being punished for basically being unsanitary or whatever. And then you go to another hadith, and there's a explanation about how to pee properly. And Muhammad is quoted as saying half the punishment of the grave is from peeing improperly. So that actually makes it a big deal. And you're like, this is in the sources.
Now, let me interrupt here, because what people are going to say is that you guys are just picking weird, obscure things, taking it out of context, and just trying to make Muhammad look stupid.
Well, we do. I have no shame to say the goal is to expose Muhammad as a false prophet, but we're doing this with his own words and instructions and commands. The goal has never been to make fun of Muslims or mock Muslims. In fact, most of what we do, most Muslims have never done and would never do in Islamicize Me. That's kind of the point. The point is that if you fully go all the way at what Muhammad says, it looks like something different than what actually is practiced out, and it looks much worse.
All right, we're going to take a brief break here, and I'm going to come back for the rest of that interview in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to show you a couple of things. First, the Street Apologist Live website here, which is over there. Welcome to Street Apologist Live. This is where Vocab Malone had all of his old school. So when I was talking to him a couple years ago, this was his website. As you can see, he's got more than 50,000 subscribers here. So he recently has rebranded. Now he's here at what's called God City, and he's shortened his name to Cab Malone just to make it easier and to get it all fit on the bumper sticker. So this is the new channel. I recommend you check that out. I'll try to remember to put that link in the description, but if not, God City Live is the @ there, youtube.com/ God City Live. But the old school was Street Apologist Live. This is what he went by for 10 years. So it was called Street Apologist. He was known as the Street Apologist, vocab Malone. And if you go there and you search for Islam, right here you find the Islamicize Me Special Edition. So all of the fabulous episodes, and of course YouTube has to throw ads on everything, but here's all of the episodes in order, so you can watch all of it in glorious color and surround sound and all that jazz. Check it out. It's definitely worth checking out. Again, I will try to remember to put that link in the description, but you can always just look for the Street Apologist. Hey, zip it. YouTube's trying to play ads on me here. Nobody needs your styles, YouTube. Pipe down. What you do need, though, just to take a break from all this, is some rock and roll. So I'm going to introduce you to a song by KNMW, our German friends. This is Red and Gold by KNMW. Enjoy the rock power here on Rent a Friend Radio. I will be right back.
The nightmare colors of the devil I've seen. Black and white, the everyday color of the devil I've been.
Living nightmare, living dream. Eat it up, enjoy the scene.
Face yourself, stare you down, swing your axe down to the ground. I showed up as someone else, boldly mocking hell's dark gates. I showed up with devil's smile, dancing through the winds of fate. And I left you there to chase my dreams. I left you there to see the world below me. I turned the sky red, tore down the blue, but I couldn't see.
I couldn't see you.
I couldn't see you.
Red and gold, tempting the hand of the devil I've seen. Black and white, seeing the face of the devil I've been. Closer to you every day. I still go back to my old ways. Heaven's light shines through my haze. Looking up, I return your gaze. I'll come back for you someday. If you're there when I return, those days we had still fade away, and this suit of gold begins to burn.
Red,
I turn the sky red.
red and gold. Tore down the blue. Red and gold.
I looked everywhere,
Red and gold.
but I couldn't see. I couldn't see you.
Yeah, KNMW singing Red and Gold. That's from a musical, so it's not one of their own originals. That's a cover of a song from a musical called The Rockstar Diaries, which is kind of a modern retelling of The Prodigal Son. So more of that music's going to be coming out over the course of the next year, probably. It's a Dr. Cheese Experience project, so Dr. Cheese will be handling that with all of his friends over at Love and Muffins Music. We are now going to get back into that interview with Vocab Malone. He's going to tell us a bit more about the Islamicize Me special edition. So, like I showed you, if you go to his previous channel, the one he was on for 10 years, Street Apologist, and you just search it for Islam, it's all in a playlist there together. Again, I will try to put that link in the description. So let's go back to my man, Vocab Malone, and learn a little bit more about the man, the myth, the legend, the Street Apologist.
Backpack, according to the example set by the Prophet Muhammad.
Backpack, what do I do if a fly lands in my food?
Backpack, what do I do with unbelievers?
Backpack, what does the Quran say if I fear rebellion from my mutta wife?
Looks like we've got some guidance from the Prophet himself.
Backpack, magic backpack. I'm the nigga the Mac attack backpack. With this sack reacts, I'm like a maniac. I got stacks of facts to keep you all on track.
And so,
but again, to clarify, you guys are trying to actually you're actually trying to represent what Muhammad actually said and actually commanded, right?
Yeah,
it's
we read from the sources in the series.
Right.
Yeah, we just read directly from the sources in the series, and we usually have multiple sources per episode. And the thing is, we didn't even, someone could say, hey, you're just da-da-da. We didn't even get to all the things we could have got to. There's a lot of stuff that we were like, we could do this again. Or, there are things we never ended up being able to do as far as other instructions, such as forcing Christians to the narrowest, or forcing infidels, but that would be Christians as well, forcing them to the narrowest part of the road when you walk by them on the street. We're going to have this episode where we have a fight, but the Christians are like trained martial artists, and so we get beat up, because they're acting in self-defense because we're put. Yeah, so so we didn't include that, but there's stuff like that. And the thing is, if you look at the history of Islam, things like that actually were practiced, especially during the medieval era, and even in the early medieval era as well, as Islam expanded out in a very imperialistic fashion. And as that happened, you have rules for about how to treat dhimmis. These are the second-class citizens who are living in Islamic lands, primarily Christians and Jews. And we have a little bit of that in Islamicize Me. We take my neighbor, my fictional neighbor in the series, and he becomes our dhimmi. And because of the economic pressure we apply to him, mainly through physical force, it's all in a very comedic fashion in the series.
Yes.
He then converts to Islam to avoid having to pay the dhimmi. But the thing is, this really happens in a real macrocosmic. We're doing a microcosm in a silly way. This happens in real life in Egypt, in Iraq, and in Muslim lands. What we're actually doing. So Islamicize Me is showing all that, and we really the people may say we pull no punches. We actually pull some punches to a certain extent, but we also push the envelope. And so the series is not for everybody. Did we go overboard sometimes? I'm sure we did.
What you gonna do, Kufar, when Allah decides to abrogate you?
To be honest, which ones are overboard, I'm not even 100% sure. Changes week to week, but at the same time, is the main goal accomplished? And is it educational, engaging, and entertaining? Yes, yes, yes. And I was glad to be part of it. And right now, re-uploading the special edition, which is edited by you, Brian, on my YouTube channel, so people can see the special edition.
I admit to nothing, but. Just to clarify, because again, well, first of all, the more I learn about this, the more I think, is it even possible to accurately discuss the life of Muhammad in a way that is PG? Like, with, could you make an accurate for children or family-friendly version? Would Caleb ever be able to air something that accurately describes what Muhammad was like?
Well, so you'd have to leave a lot out.
Right.
And that, I think that's exactly what a lot of Muslims, as well as, mainstream media, for example, I think that's exactly what they do.
Right.
Most Muslims there's a lot they're not aware of that are in the sources, and when they see it, there's these ways around it for whatever reason. We had
contradicts everything else.
Well, yeah, that's why you have the doctrine of abrogation, which means you can cancel out earlier revelations with later revelations. Muhammad really did prescribe camel urine as something that would make you healthy if you're sick. And people in Muslim land still drink camel pee to this day. You can go online and find defenses of people discussing why they drink camel urine. That's not the only example. The Quran, to a lesser extent, but certainly the Hadith to a greater extent, tell you what you should do with people who leave Islam. Muhammad literally said, whoever changes his religion, kill him. And he means leaving the original of Islam. He doesn't mean kill Christians who become Muslims. He means one specific thing, and you can see it by the certain things that he did. So what do you do with those who apostatize? And we show that the sort of a silly version, we're not killing people, of Islam. Muhammad did say bizarre theological things about images and pictures and dogs and how that relates to angelic visitation and not. And he did marry the wife of his formerly adopted son. And then he really did. Yeah. So you could do it in a PG way, but you'd have to leave out whole events such as breastfeeding grown adult men, so they're no longer sexually attracted to a woman whom they have to spend a lot of time around, which, by the way, that was one of his solutions, which seems odd. An odd solution to alleviate sexual tension is to have the man, but so you'd have to leave out stuff like that. But in ISLAMICIZE, maybe we don't, and that's probably the most controversial episode specifically, even though we're not, we're not showing anything, obviously, but you're getting the idea of like, oh, okay, these grown men are okay,
Well, again, I want to make clear for my audience who hasn't seen this, and if you haven't, man, go to Vocab's channel and watch it because it's hysterical. Yeah. It's very, very funny. But you're not trying to make Muhammad look stupid by putting words in his mouth or by distorting the teachings. What you're doing is by finding the actual teachings and showing if we literally tried to follow all of the teachings of Muhammad, here are some of the things that we would literally be doing if we actually were trying to follow it. Which I think is like when atheists try to do that to Christians, they're like, we would have to not eat shrimp. Like, okay, if you're gonna try to force Levitical law and New Testament, yeah, that's what it would look like. But yeah, you guys are drinking camel urine and having water and the
multan marriage, and so you'd have to leave that out of the PG-13 version of Muhammad's life as well as you probably couldn't include wiping yourself. People worried about toilet paper being run out, but in the sources, Muhammad says you can use rocks and they got to be an odd number for whatever reason. You could do that. You'd have to leave certain things out. But we almost approach it to make a comment. So even though we read several sources in almost every episode, towards the end it's more dramatic sort of an enactment. So we're not as source heavy in the very final episodes, although it's still there. It's sort of these are the ramifications that these choices have got us into as you get to the very end. We essentially
all based on the commands of the Quran.
Yes, we turn into
Islamic sources.
We turn into jihadi warriors. So by the end, we're doing Surah 929 stuff by the end. But we kind of did it in a way. It's like, imagine the Three Stooges becoming new Muslim converts without much guidance other than strictly the sources themselves. And so that's kind of what happens. And that's the comedic effect there. But the idea is not to stereotype or anything or make fun of a Muslim person. It's Muhammad's teachings. And it's from the sources, so there you go.
There you go. The outro music is funky. So that is my man, Vocab Malone. I will be back in future episodes of Rent a Friend Radio with more of Vocab Malone because he's got more stories to tell, more things to share with us. Also, in future installments, after we get past that, let me just give you a little update on where we're going. So right now, we are going through this book, Proof of God. So I'm going to be introducing you to a collection of ways to prove that the God of the Bible exists, is real, that you can know him, you can be certain And remember, Jesus loves you. And then after that, we're going to go through this, which is the opposite, where instead of making the positive case that God exists, we're going to be answering the skeptics who are like, nah. We're going to be like, uh-huh. And then after that, we're going to go through Confessions of a Young Earth Creationist, where I explain how I became a young Earth creationist, even though I was raised in public schools. And we're going to show how science and the Bible agree that the Bible's telling the truth. And then after that, we're going to go through the science of Thursday Night Nachos. So this is basically just, let's examine Darwinian evolution. What is it? Let's define it so it makes sense according to what we understand of biology and genetics. And then let's look at the proposed mechanisms of Darwinian evolution and see if it's defensible through science. Does Darwin survive the test of science? And of course, the answer is no. I don't know if that's obvious to any of you. It is to me, but then, you know, I wrote this book. So around that time, we will have finished our interview with vocab Malone, and we will be having interview segments from my conversation with Eric Hovind, who himself is a young Earth creationist whose ministry is Creation Today. And you'll get to see some of the things he has to say about it. He's a nice guy. Super dope. But as far as vocab Malone here, this is going to get us into our next song. Remember, he used to be the street apologist before he became, this year, the rebranded Cab Malone at God City. He was street apologist, and so this is his unofficial theme song performed by Shwa and the Rhyme Scientist. Enjoy Street Apologist. Yes, yes, yes. I'll be right back.
Street apologist. Street apologist. Street apologist. Hey, 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 hey. A microphone. It's Phoenix, Arizona. Coolie and refresh just like a chick of cherry cola. Rockin' the kicks, kicking those beats. Hitting the streets and bringing receipts. Never shy from the fight, never raising a fist. Vocab Malone, street apologist. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist. On the street or the web, gonna build with the Jew, the Mormon or the brothers who think they Hebrew. Atheist papers come one and come all, quoting Jesus and Paul to tear down those walls and build us some bridges in the city's midst. Vocab Malone, street apologist. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist. On the street. On the street or the web, gonna build with the Jew, the Mormon or the brothers who think they Hebrew. Atheist papers come one and come all, quoting Jesus and Paul to tear down those walls and build us some bridges in the city's midst. Vocab Malone, street apologist. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist, yes, yes, yes. Street apologist. 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 Street apologist.
Shwa and the Rhyme Scientist here on Rent a Friend Radio, singing the unofficial theme song to my man, the myth, the legend, Cab Malone, the street apologist, now at God City. I just realized what my brain is doing there. That's Hello City from BNL, and I'm singing his. It's a mess up there. Don't try to guess. Don't try to understand it. All right. My friends, it is time for us to go through a couple more chapters from Proof of God. You can know God exists and the Bible is true. So that's what the whole point of this book is. Again, as always, our books are available as free digital downloads over at abitoforange.com. That's not our official theme song. We're working on it. The paperback version is on Amazon. There's a link with the free digital downloads. If you go to abitoforange.com and go to free books and find this one, in the neighborhood of the free digital download will be a link to Amazon where you can buy the paperback version if that's what you want. All right, welcome to Chapter 2, Sleeping Through Math Class. We're going to dust off the cobwebs of our minds and try to remember way back to our various math classes. Remember how the cover of the book always looked like the jacket for some Atari racing game or 1980s pop album cover? Remember that thing the teacher had which held chalk and allowed him to draw perfect circles on the board? Remember that blonde girl from Alabama who sat behind you and managed to learn nothing? Even though the option of being distracted by like an iPhone was still years away. Oh man, those were good times. Oh, and there was something about numbers? I don't know, try to remember some of that because today it will help. Roach clowns all the time be trying to set the bar for acceptable proofs for God's existence so high that nothing could ever be acceptable as evidence in favor of the biblical worldview. One of the things they demand is 100% certain mathematical proofs. Conversations on social media tend to sound like this. If you want me to believe that God exists, you'll have to show me evidence that is 100% mathematically certain. You want me to prove God exists with math? You know God isn't an equation, right? I knew it. You can't prove that God exists. Winning! No, really, let's talk about what you think the word God means, because it seems like you have no idea. Christians are all hypocrites. I think we need to talk about what you think God means, because the Grand Canyon proves the flood never happened. Am I even part of this conversation? In the previous chapter, I showed how demanding 100% certainty is an unrealistic goal, first because certainty is not dependent on the facts, but rather on the person who needs to be persuaded. And secondly, because a skeptic can choose to reject anything as certain, even his own existence. If you can't convince a person that he exists, there's no point in trying to talk him into anything else. After all, if he's not certain he's there, who are you even talking to? Demanding 100% mathematical certainty merely shows how the Roach Clown doesn't understand math. The Roach Clown here is intending to demand evidence, which is scientific. But science is not math, and the ways in which evidence is used for scientific models is not the same way in which math can be used to prove something true. Math is not based on deductive or inductive reasoning, wherein evidence is shown to strongly support a conclusion. Math is based on something much simpler. We can be absolutely sure that 2 + 2 = 4, not because of science or because of smart people doing smart things in smart books or on smart TV shows, if such a thing exists, but merely because of the definition of the terms. The law of non-contradiction says that anything, A, is itself A, and thus for anything, A equals A. If you rename A so that it has a name tag that says, "Hello, my name is Perfecto Sanchez," this does not change the fact that A equals A, because when A equals Perfecto Sanchez, what you're saying is Perfecto Sanchez equals Perfecto Sanchez, which is really just another way of saying A equals A. There's no trick here. It really is that easy. When we say 2 + 2 = 4, we are saying A, 4, equals A, also 4. Only on one side we have written the sum before as 2 + 2. As a different example, when I say that a shape with 3 sides is a triangle, I am not saying a shape with 3 sides can become a triangle when the appropriate tools and techniques are applied by a master craftsman. I simply mean that a shape with 3 sides, a triangle, equals a shape with 3 sides, a triangle. This is true merely as a matter of definition. So as long as you are sane and sober enough to accept the law of non-contradiction, you can see that math is not scientific evidence based on observation, intelligence, and some kind of skill, but merely calling things what they are. Metaphysically, 2 + 2 = 4 is equivalent to a shape with 3 sides equals a triangle. Anything is itself. Of that we can be 100% certain. When you are asking for mathematical proofs for the existence of God, what you are saying is you want it to be shown that by definition, God is someone that exists, and thus God equals real. Can God's existence be proven with 100% mathematical certainty? Well, yes it can. Saint Anselm of Canterbury did that like 1,000 years ago. You're welcome. So I guess I'll be seeing you in church. If that girl from Alabama is there, don't sit near her. She'll just be playing Candy Crush on her iPhone. And remember, Jesus loves you. All right, my friends, we are going to take ourselves a little break with some more rock and roll, and then we're going to come back to some more proof of God. So prepare yourselves for 6 Strings of Love at Makato no Musume here on Rent a Friend Radio. No Musume, 6 Strings of Love. That's the English version. You can hear the Japanese version over on Dr. Cheese's YouTube channel, the Dr. Cheese Experience, links in the description, or on Makato no Musume's part of the Love and Muffins music website. She's got her own page with a bunch of her music and a bit about her. Again, links in the description. All right, my friends, are you ready for more? Because it's time for more Proof of God. Get this book as a free digital download at abitoforange.com or buy the paperback version from Amazon. Welcome to Chapter 3, The Elephant Not in the Room, a brief interruption about certainty. During the previous chapters, you may have gotten the idea that I am saying that 100% certainty is an unachievable goal, and thus we need to have faith in things we can't be certain of. But this is not what I'm saying, and I want to interrupt my book to make sure I'm clear of my point. The demand for 100% certainty is presented as if it is a demand for a certain type of evidence. You may think that it is distinguishing between hard evidence, like the kind characters on a CSI show would find at a crime scene, such that they could put it in a cardboard box and take it back to the office. This is opposed to soft evidence, such as anecdotal evidence, like the time your friend in middle school said his cousin went to church with a guy who heard the voice of God one night, telling him to invest in a chicken farm or something like that. Maybe that's all true, but it lacks the certainty of finding fingerprints on the murder weapon. First, as I said in the previous chapter, the demand for 100% certainty is not actually about the evidence itself, but rather about the person who needs convincing. Evidence can't be certain at all. Evidence just is whatever it is. It's some kind of fact. It becomes evidence when it is used to prove a proposition to be accurate, and it becomes 100% certain when the person being persuaded decides that he has to accept your position because of the strength of the evidence. I was talking to an atheist online recently, by which I mean I was talking to an agnostic who calls himself an atheist, and he said that the demand that atheists prove atheism is unreasonable because one cannot prove a negative. You can't prove something isn't. I disagreed and offered the example of there not being an elephant in my room. I could look around my room and know for certain that there was not an elephant in my room. It's a small room and offers no hiding places sufficient for an elephant of any kind. I could look around and not see an elephant, and to me that was 100% certain evidence that there was no elephant in my room. I told him this and suggested that he could choose to believe me, though because of the placement of my webcam, he could not see what I could see. Thus far, he had my testimony that there was no elephant in the room, but was it sufficient? Was it 100% certain proof that there was no elephant in the room? Well, that depends entirely on his faith in me as a trustworthy person, and on whatever reasons he might have to think that there was an elephant in my room. For someone who trusts me, they can have 100% certainty. Perhaps my atheist friend needed to see the room. If I showed him the room and he could see for himself that there was indeed no elephant, would that prove 100% certainty? Again, this depends on his thinking. If he felt seeing was believing, then seeing a room with no elephant in it would be certain evidence that the room had no elephant in it. But remember that there are some people who reject as certain evidence or arguments for their own existence. Some people cannot ever be given 100% certain evidence, arguments, or proofs, but that is because of their own quirky personality. It's not a comment on the evidence or arguments themselves. Many apologists don't talk about 100% Many apologists don't talk about 100% certainty, but rather discuss the power and scope of an argument. To say an argument has great power is to say that when the known facts are considered, it points to a conclusion being far more likely to be true than it is not to be true. For example, when I show you my room and you don't see an elephant, that is powerful evidence that there is no elephant in my room. However certain you feel, you must admit that seeing a room with no elephant is much more powerful evidence for there being no elephant in the room than it is for there being an elephant in the room. Thus, the reasonable conclusion based on the evidence is to accept it powerfully likely that there is no elephant in the room. But this means that you are also concluding that it is powerfully likely that the claim that there is an elephant in the room must be a false claim. We tend to use the language of certainty only when we discuss things which have to be, or things which are impossible. More on that later in this book. For instance, if I say I have an elephant in my pocket, we can know with 100% certainty that it is not true, because it is impossible for an elephant to be in a pocket. It could never fit. Thus, my claim has to be false. On the other hand, if I claim that I do not have an elephant in my pocket, that is also 100% certainly true, and for the same reason. Thus, claims of fact, something being or not being, can be made with absolute certainty, provided they are made clearly. The scope of an argument is about how much of the known data the explanation deals with. If I show you that there is no elephant in my room via the webcam, but you heard elephant noises just before I turned the camera to face the room, and you know that I live in a circus that has a dozen elephants, the scope and power of my evidence starts to diminish. In my example, showing you my room covers part of the knowable data. In other words, can you see an elephant in my room? But it doesn't cover all of the knowable data, that you heard elephant sounds picked up from my webcam. In this case, my argument, that you can be certain there is no elephant because you cannot see one, lacks explanatory scope because it fails to account for what you heard and only addresses what you see. In summation, when someone demands of you evidence which is 100% certain, just keep in mind that they are making a demand not about the evidence, but about their own willingness to accept your evidence, arguments, or conclusion. It's an unreasonable demand. They are literally insisting that you make them believe what you are claiming to be the truth. What you ought to try to provide is evidence, arguments, and reasons with great explanatory scope and power. They lead to your conclusion and show it to be far more likely to be true than not to be true, and they account for all of the knowable facts. But if a person cannot be convinced with certainty that he doesn't exist, neither elephants nor arguments will be helpful to him about anything else. Brief musical interlude. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. All right, welcome to Chapter 4 of Proof of God. The elephant in the room, a brief interruption about faith. In the previous interruption, I talked about making a solid case for your position that has powerful explanatory scope and power. It accounts for all of the evidence, and it leads logically to your position, and also leads just as reasonably to showing that the opposite assertion cannot be true. All of this was done in the context of showing atheists that the Bible is true and can be trusted. But there is another context where this is also very important, and that is in your own faith. Not terribly long ago, I asked a teen boy a fairly common question. This boy had been raised in the church in a Christian home, so I was confident I knew what his answer would be. I asked, "Is the Bible true?" And naturally he said yes. But then I asked, "Why?" He pondered for a moment and then said, "Because we believe it." Again, this is the answer I expected, but it was entirely wrong. When it comes to your own faith, you need to put yourself in the place of the person to be convinced and build not only an unshakable faith, but a reasonable faith. I don't know how unshakable this boy's faith was, but I knew that it was not reasonable. Nothing is true because we believe it. Rather, we should believe something because it is true. If he thinks the Bible is true because we believe it, then he most likely has no reasons why we should believe it. After all, if believing makes it true, then the matter is settled and you need no further answers. But then if believing makes it true, then what about people who believe something entirely different? 1 Peter 3:15 says, "In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you." Being prepared to make a case does not start with blind optimism or selfish stubbornness. It starts with seeking the truth. Before you try to make the case for Christ and win the lost back to church, you need to take the time to think about what it is you believe. Can you explain it? Can you defend it? Does it fit the facts? Or is your certainty mere stubbornness? In everything, not just the questions about religion and spirituality, but about politics, money, military, who you vote for, what rules you give to your kids, what habits you form for yourself. Put yourself in the hot seat and think about your beliefs. Use reason and available evidence to discover the truth. Don't be content to merely look for reasons that you've always been right, but have the humility to be asked those tough questions and start by being the one to ask them of yourself. Sometimes this is a lot of work, and sometimes it is unsettling, but better to unsettle lies that you believe in the search for truth than to let them stay settled in your heart. Find good resources and see what the defense is for what you believe. Then see what the arguments are against it, and see what the replies are to those arguments. The truth will always win because a lie is harder to defend. The truth will always lead you back to the Bible, back to Jesus. One last thing. There are a great many things which are not built on a solid foundation of Scripture. Things like how old your kids need to be before they're baptized, or how often your church should be having communion, or what styles of music are appropriate for worship. Hold these with an open hand. Fight for the gospel, debate the side issues with respect, and have the humility to hold tradition or preferences with an open hand. Truth is that which is revealed by God. Don't confuse that with the things you personally prefer. Good advice for everybody. All right, my friends, I've got one more bit of rock and roll for you before we call it a day. So we're going to end with Scoops of Jesus by the Dr. Cheese Experience. Enjoy this, and I'll be back in just a minute to bid you farewell here on Rent a Friend Radio.
Everyone's serving up scoops of Jesus, but nothing like we've got. Once you see the competition, you'll like ours a lot. There's only 4 to choose from, and not all I'll make equal. 3 of them are far-fetched as a Star Trek movie sequel. Wrath of Khan, on search for Spock, the voyage home, final frontier. The first is called the legend, and it's just an empty cone. The scoops have all gone missing, so they're scoops in name alone. They say ice cream's just a story that we tell kids at the mall, yet somehow it got famous when it wasn't ever there at all. The next size is the liar, and it isn't worth the price. It's not as great as advertised, and you'll pay for it twice. It's freezer burned vanilla that's been labeled as fudge ripple. The scoop is really tiny, but they tell you it's a triple. The next one is the loony, and you'll think we made it up. It's a wad of napkins stuffed into a ragged paper cup. Instead of satisfaction, you'll wind up with paper cuts. Stay away from this if you're allergic to nuts. Finally, the Lord scoop. This triple's got it all. It'll save you from your hunger. It's the best food at the mall. It satisfies completely, and you'll never beat the price. It's been paid for already, and you must admit that's nice. The legend is a loser, for it's forced to swim upstream against a flood of history, for we know there is ice cream. Yeah, the liar and the loony also prove to be a waste. They haven't got the substance or the value or the taste. The Lord's the only one that could be real, so it appears. It's given satisfaction for more than 2,000 years.
Dr. Cheese and the Dr. Cheese Experience, singing scoops of Jesus. Makes me want to eat some ice cream. All right, so I'm about out of time here, so I'm going to assign you your homework, my friends. I want you to start conversations with the people you go to church with. And I want you to ask them just a couple of real simple questions. Number one, how certain are you that the Bible is true? Right? Would they say they're 100% certain? Or is there some kind of gray area where they're like, what? So ask them that. Like, what's the average percentage of the people? Let me know in the comment section. But then ask them this: whoever says yes, I'm confident the Bible is true, whether it's 100% or not, say, why do you think it's true? Like, ask them that and see what kind of answers they give you, and then let me know. Let me know what kind of conversations you have down in the description. And if you have any questions, of course, you're always welcome to leave those in the description. Down on, we also have, hold on, we have our email banner. Ta-da! Creation Soapbox. You can send questions or comments to creationsoapbox@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer them for you, unless you're a roach clown who's just showing up to go, I don't know what you think, but you're stupid and I hate you, because I'm just going to delete that. So if you have an actual question or comment, or even a disagreement, as long as it's something rational and not just empty name calling, I'm happy to hear it. All right, that is... that's all we got. Thanks for letting me be your Rent-A-Friend. And remember, Jesus loves you. I'll see you next time on Rent-A-Friend Radio.
Jesus loves you is the message we send. Thanks for letting me be your Rent-A-Friend. Much already at zero. He's a friend to all. Answers worst friend of all. Yeah, your best worst friend of all. You're listening to Rent a Friend Radio.